Let's start by delving into the importance of Indonesia. Why Indonesia is important for the superpowers? Indonesia's economic and military importance in Southeast Asia have drawn attention from both the West and the East. With a GDP of $1.19 trillion in 2023, Indonesia is the region's largest economy and ranks 16th globally by nominal GDP. Its projected 5% growth in 2024 is driven by strong domestic consumption and substantial infrastructure investments. Foreign direct investment, totaling $47.5 billion in 2023, has significantly boosted key sectors like metal goods and telecommunications. Militarily, Indonesia has a substantial force of 400,000 active personnel and a $9.4 billion defense budget, underscoring its strategic regional influence. Indonesia's position in global geopolitics has often been neutral, especially in the face of international tensions and challenges. However, in recent years, the country has shown an increasing inclination towards China over the United States and the West. This shift is driven by several factors, primarily economic and strategic considerations. Economically, China's robust investment in Indonesia, particularly in the nickel industry, has solidified their partnership. Indonesia has become a leading global producer of nickel, a critical component for electric vehicle batteries, with Chinese companies heavily investing in the sector. This economic synergy has propelled Indonesia to supply over half of the world's nickel, making China its primary partner in this venture. Strategically, Indonesia's stance is shaped by regional dynamics and the perception of the United States' reliability as a partner. While the U.S. has made significant diplomatic efforts in Southeast Asia, including high-level visits and the establishment of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, there are growing doubts about its commitment and consistency. These concerns have been exacerbated by the U.S.'s involvement in global conflicts which some Southeast Asian countries perceive as destabilizing. Furthermore, Indonesia's alignment with China is also driven by regional geopolitical realities. China is viewed as the most influential economic and political power in Southeast Asia, and Indonesia, along with other ASEAN nations, finds economic alignment with China advantageous. In this video, we explore the complex relationship of Indonesia with China and the US from both historical and modern perspectives. Let's start by delving into the importance of Indonesia. Why Indonesia is important for the superpowers? Indonesia, strategically located at the crossroads of the Indian and Pacific Oceans, is a significant player in global maritime trade. With 60% of the world's maritime trade passing through its waters, Indonesia's position is critical for international shipping routes. This geographical advantage contributes immensely to the nation's economy, making it highly coveted by global powers. Indonesia's maritime sector is extensive, with the maritime industry contributing approximately 11.3% to the national GDP in 2020. This figure is expected to grow to 12.5% by 2045. Underscoring the sector's expanding role in Indonesia's economic landscape. The country has initiated several projects to bolster its maritime infrastructure, including the Sea Toll program, which aims to enhance maritime transport routes, especially in the eastern regions. As of 2022, there were 33 sea toll routes, with plans to increase this number to 39 by the end of 2023. This initiative has significantly narrowed the price gap for essential goods, benefiting remote regions like Papua and Maluku. In 2022, the transportation and warehousing sector in Indonesia saw substantial growth, with a year-on-year increase of 36.68%, driven by investments and increased mobility. The government's focus on infrastructure is evident, with significant allocations for road, rail, and port projects, constituting a substantial portion of ongoing and future infrastructure initiatives. Digitalization is another driving force in Indonesia's maritime sector. The implementation of various digital systems has improved port service productivity and efficiency. For instance, the INA-PortNet system has been integrated into 109 ports, with plans to expand to 260 ports, streamlining ship entry and exit processes and cargo handling operations. Moreover, Indonesia's port performance is notable on the global stage. In 2022, Indonesia secured the 9th position globally for port performance, the highest in Southeast Asia, and surpassed the global average for container ship arrivals. The country's maritime strategy also includes a focus on greener practices, aligning with international mandates to combat climate change. These efforts are part of a broader vision to position Indonesia as a pivotal maritime power by 2045. Now let's discuss what makes Indonesia a battleground for China and the United States. Indonesia, China and USA role. Indonesia's strategic importance has made it a key battleground for influence between the United States and China. Both nations are investing heavily in Indonesia to secure its favor, a move that could significantly shift the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region. China has been highly proactive in expanding its influence in Indonesia through the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Chinese investments in Indonesia span infrastructure projects including the construction of ports, railways and highways. For instance, the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail project, valued at approximately $6 billion, is one of the flagship BRI projects in Indonesia. China's involvement extends to digital infrastructure, with Chinese tech giants investing in Indonesia's burgeoning digital economy. The United States, on the other hand, is countering China's influence with its own set of strategic investments and partnerships. The US has committed billions to various sectors in Indonesia, focusing on energy, technology, and defense. For example, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, has pledged significant investments to support infrastructure and digital projects in Indonesia. Additionally, the U.S. has strengthened military cooperation through joint exercises and defense sales, aiming to bolster Indonesia's military capabilities and secure a strategic ally in the region. Now let's analyze the economic and military strength of Indonesia as of 2024. Economic and military strength of Indonesia. Indonesia's growing economic and military strength makes it a valuable ally. With a GDP growth rate that has consistently been one of the highest in Southeast Asia, Indonesia is projected to become one of the world's largest economies by 2045. Militarily, Indonesia has been modernizing its armed forces, increasing defense spending and procuring advanced weaponry, making it a significant player in regional security dynamics. Indonesia's role in global maritime trade. Maritime activities are fundamental to Indonesia's economy. The sector significantly contributes to GDP and employment, leveraging the archipelago's extensive coastline and numerous ports. Indonesia's maritime policy, articulated under President Joko Widodo's vision of the global maritime nexus, aims to transform the nation into a pivotal maritime power. This vision focuses on enhancing port infrastructure, boosting the shipping industry, and promoting maritime tourism, which are integral to stimulating economic growth and integrating the diverse economies across the islands. Indonesia is also committed to sustainable maritime practices. Initiatives like the Riau Islands Sustainable Shipping Initiative, SSI, aim to optimize shipping routes to reduce fuel consumption and emissions. Efforts to promote the use of cleaner fuels such as LNG and biofuels are underway. The Bali Clean Energy Initiative, BCEI, further illustrates Indonesia's dedication to transitioning maritime transport to renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power, contributing to global decarbonization goals. Energy transition and decarbonization. The maritime industry is integral to Indonesia's broader energy transition. The nation has opportunities to become a leader in the production and supply of scalable zero-emission fuels, SZF, such as green hydrogen and green ammonia. This transition is not only crucial for reducing the maritime sector's greenhouse gas emissions, which account for about 3% of global emissions, but also for fostering economic development and creating sustainable jobs within Indonesia. The maritime industry is integral to Indonesia's broader energy transition. The nation has opportunities to become a leader in the production and supply of scalable, zero-emission fuels, SEF, such as green hydrogen and green ammonia. This transition is not only crucial for reducing the maritime sector's greenhouse gas emissions, which account for about 3% of global emissions, but also for fostering economic development and creating sustainable jobs within Indonesia. Military significance. Indonesia's military is one of the largest in Southeast Asia, with approximately 400,000 active personnel. The country's defense budget has seen consistent increases, reflecting its strategic importance and regional influence. In 2023, Indonesia's defense budget was estimated to be around $9.4 billion. This funding supports a diverse array of military assets including 7 frigates, 4 submarines, 25 corvettes, 23 patrol craft, and a variety of support vessels. The Indonesian military also focuses on modernizing its forces and enhancing its capabilities to address various security challenges, such as piracy, illegal fishing, and territorial disputes in the South China Sea. International cooperation and defense partnerships, particularly with countries like Australia and the United States, play a crucial role in augmenting Indonesia's military strength and operational capacity. Now let's delve into the history of Indonesia and discuss Dutch colonial rule and its impact on Indonesia. Historical context: Dutch colonial rule and its impact on Indonesia. Indonesia was under Dutch colonial rule for over 3 centuries, starting in the early 1600s and lasting until 1949. This period had profound and lasting impacts on the region, characterized by both the establishment of infrastructure and significant oppression and exploitation of the local population. The Dutch established significant infrastructure in Indonesia, especially on the island of Java. They built extensive networks of roads, railroads, and ports to facilitate the extraction and export of resources, particularly from the sugar industry. By the mid-19th century, sugar production in Java was a major economic activity, accounting for a substantial portion of the Dutch government's revenue. The Dutch constructed 94 sugar processing factories, which stimulated local economies and led to increased manufacturing and higher education levels in areas surrounding these factories. Economic exploitation and forced labor. Despite these developments, the Dutch colonial system was highly exploitative. The cultivation system, 1830 to 1870, forced local farmers to grow export crops like sugar and coffee, which benefited the Dutch economy at the expense of the Indonesian populace. This system relied heavily on forced labor, significantly restricting the rights and freedoms of Indonesians. The Dutch also exported high-quality sugar, keeping lower-quality produce for local consumption, further highlighting the exploitative nature of their rule. The Dutch colonial rule also had significant social and political repercussions. The introduction of the ethical policy in 1901 aimed to improve living standards through education and infrastructure but had limited success. However, it inadvertently fostered Indonesian nationalism by educating a small elite who began to organize and demand independence. Organizations like Budi Utomo, 1908, and Sarekat Islam, 1911, emerged, laying the groundwork for a broader nationalist movement. The repression of these movements by the Dutch authorities only intensified nationalist sentiments, culminating in the formation of the Indonesian Nationalist Party in 1927 and the declaration of the Youth Pledge in 1928, which called for unity and independence. The long-term effects of Dutch colonial rule are complex. While certain regions benefited from the infrastructure and became more economically productive, the overall impact on Indonesian society was largely negative due to the systemic exploitation and oppression. The disparity between regions that were heavily industrialized by the Dutch and those that were not persists to this day, reflecting the uneven development imposed by colonial policies. Post-World War II independence movement. After a brief Japanese occupation during World War II, Indonesia declared independence on August 17, 1945. This declaration was followed by a complex struggle involving both diplomatic efforts and armed resistance against Dutch attempts to reassert control. Key diplomatic negotiations included the Linggadjati Agreement, 1947, and the Renville Agreement, 1948, which temporarily recognized Indonesian sovereignty but failed to resolve the conflict. The armed resistance, marked by significant battles and guerrilla warfare, continued until international pressure, particularly from the United Nations, led to the Dutch recognition of Indonesian sovereignty on December 27, 1949. US and Soviet Union influence during the Cold War. During the Cold War, Indonesia adeptly navigated between US and Soviet influences. Both superpowers sought to gain Indonesia's allegiance by offering substantial military and economic aid. The US provided assistance to counter communist threats, especially after General Suharto's anti-communist purge in 1965. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union supported Indonesia with military equipment and economic aid in the early 1960s under President Sukarno, who maintained a non-aligned stance while leveraging Soviet support to balance Western influence. This strategic balancing act allowed Indonesia to maximize its autonomy and benefits during a turbulent period. Modern geopolitical landscape. As a founding member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, Indonesia plays a pivotal role in regional cooperation and economic integration. Since its establishment on August 8, 1967, Indonesia, along with other founding nations like Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand, has contributed significantly to ASEAN's development and cohesion. Indonesia's influence within ASEAN is underscored by its robust economic performance. In 2023, Indonesia's GDP growth rate was around 5%, with a similar growth forecast for 2024. Private consumption, which accounts for approximately 53% of Indonesia's total GDP, continues to be a primary driver of this growth. Moreover, Indonesia has attracted substantial foreign direct investment, particularly in sectors like base metals and electric vehicle battery manufacturing, highlighting its strategic economic position within ASEAN. ASEAN provides Indonesia with a platform to articulate its interests collectively with other Southeast Asian nations, enhancing its diplomatic and economic leverage. As part of ASEAN, Indonesia benefits from regional initiatives aimed at boosting economic integration, improving connectivity, and fostering socio-cultural cooperation. The ASEAN Economic Community, AEC, aims to create a single market and production base, which further integrates Indonesia into the regional and global economy. Additionally, Indonesia's leadership in ASEAN is evident from its role in key regional initiatives and its periodic chairmanship of the organization, most recently in 2023, under the theme ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. This leadership helps shape policies that drive regional stability, economic growth, and socio-cultural development. Relations with the US and China in contemporary times. Indonesia's foreign policy in recent years has been characterized by a pragmatic approach, balancing economic opportunities with China and defense ties with the United States. Under President Joko Widodo, Indonesia has seen China become its largest trading partner and investor, with Chinese exports to Indonesia reaching $71.32 billion in 2022. Significant Chinese investments in infrastructure have further solidified this economic relationship. However, Indonesia has also maintained robust defense ties with the US. Prabowo Subianto, Indonesia's defense minister and president-elect, has fostered closer military cooperation with the US, exemplified by the signing of new defense-related agreements and enhanced security exercises. Prabowo's military background and US training add a layer of complexity, as his administration could see a more active geopolitical stance while continuing the strategic partnership with the US. Summary: Indonesia's future relationship with China and the US will likely continue to be a balancing act. While economic ties with China are growing stronger, the US remains a critical partner in security and counterterrorism. Indonesia's pragmatic and non-aligned foreign policy approach will play a crucial role in navigating these complex relationships.